Hi, everyone, and I'm so excited as I have a special guest with me, Dr. Bob Winters. I have an incredible story of how I got a hold of him, which I'm going to share with everybody after I explain exactly what Dr. Bob Winters does. I really wanted to kind of take a moment to really go over really what he does, his accomplishments and things like that, because of the fact that um, first of all, Dr. Winters, I really appreciate you being here because I know you're very busy, and also too, I know that you are pretty good at what you do. So I'm also pretty thankful and blessed that you are on this channel, so you can help in this podcast. So you can help give advice to a lot of our viewers. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's great to be here. Yeah, super.
Of course. So I'm just going to kind of go over what you do so everybody knows, and then we'll get into really the good stuff, guys. What we're going to talk about today is a lot of mindset training, a lot of things in regards to fears and really how to control it. And we're going to go into that, and now here's why. So Dr. Winters is an international renowned sports psychologist, author, and professional speaker. He holds bachelor and master's degrees from Ball State University and has earned a Ph.D. doctorate in sports psychology from the University of Virginia. His major academic areas were confidence, performance enhancement, counseling, and educational research. Dr. Winters has spent the past 35 years investigating how one's thoughts and attitudes affects one's abilities to perform to their optimal talent level. No one in the world has had a larger impact on helping all types of athletes get into the winner circle like Dr. Winters. Another thing too I want to mention is a couple of things in regards to Dr. Winters. He's really unlike any other sports performance coach in the world today. His years of applied athletic and coaching experience set him apart from all other sports psychologists or mental training coaches. He's had 45 years of playing sports and competitive golf, every level of professional golf, Division One Division One coach for 9 years at University of Virginia. He's the director of Nike Golf Schools at University of Virginia, Boca Raton Resort, and Williams College. Has coached and mentored over 75 All-American athletes at the NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, and the NAIA levels. He's worked with over 50 different teams with mental coaches and sports psychologists to their teams. Dr. Winter has also done work with professional and amateur athletes from various sports as far as the NBA, NFL, Olympics, and Supercross. So thank you again for being here, Dr. Winters.
Wow, you just wear me out just going through, sort of my resume.
I
And
know.
so it's
And that
just
was
great
just half of it, by the way.
well, we don't have to go into that. I think they get the idea. So
Yeah.
it's good. Well, it's great to be on the show, on the podcast. And kudos to you for all your success. You're helping a lot of people. And that's really what we're in this business for performance psychology, and help make people happier, healthier, and just enjoy life. That's really what it's all about.
Exactly. That's so true. Dr. Winters, do you mind mentioning a couple like athletes that you probably, I love basketball, by the way. So I was researching you and I was like, oh my gosh, I love the fact that has mental coaches, has had mental coaching with some of the NBA players, which is amazing to me.
Well, it's funny. I got a call from a great player by the name of Laurent Prophet, who was one of the coaches, performance coaches for the Orlando Magic. And Coach Prophet had, actually sort of critiqued me and reviewed me and said, "Hey, I think you're just the guy for one of our players." And that was, a young Victor Oladipo.
Yeah.
I was playing for the Orlando Magic at the time. But what people have to remember is that Laurent, he was actually for years, with Kobe Bryant, one of Kobe Bryant's, the Black Mambas, teammates. And so he really knew something about success, about confidence. And so he actually sort of led me into Victor, and, the rest is sort of history. So Victor is one of them. I've had motocross champions like Adam Cianciarulo, great motocross champions, but I've had golfers, tennis players, the Brooks Koepkas, the Justin Roses, the number ones in the world. But the list is very, very distinguished. But, I think the most rewarding part of this is when you get an email or you get a phone call from a parent or from an amateur athlete or even professional, and they go, "Wow, you've really made a big, significant impact in my life." And maybe I haven't heard from these people in 10, 15 years, and where they were playing in athletics, and now they're on Wall Street, or they're a professional business person, man or woman, on Wall Street, lawyer, doctor, or just, construction worker, or administrative assistant, and they're just having a blast doing what they're all about. So that's really, the basis of my work. It's all about helping people grow. And I've always asked people, where do you want to go? And not too many people call me in the middle of the night, Apollonia, and say, wow, can you help me become incredibly average? I want to be the most mediocre person here, right? So everybody wants to achieve some type of greatness. And that's the whole point, to be comfortable in your own skin and just to be really happy being who you are, because that is the ultimate, I think, self-actualization, that you like who you are and you don't have to meet other people's judgments or evaluations or expectations.
Exactly.
So that's probably a pretty good place to start, I imagine.
Yeah. Yes, I would love to get there, but also I would love to share a story to some of our listeners on that story of how I got a hold of you. So, as a lot of people know, I've coached more than a handful, I would say over 5,000 people from all over the world. And I coached a gentleman, and at the end of the call, I was like, what do you really need me for? And he was like, I just want to understand maybe what she was thinking. And I was like, okay. So I told him, I was like, do you mind if I ask you a question? It's a little personal at the end of the session. It was like 45 minutes. And he's like, yeah, sure, of course. I was like, I've noticed your mindset is just amazing. The way that you've articulated yourself, the way that you've handled yourself, the way that you process your dialogue with me, and how you thought about this through, how you've looked at the pros and cons, how you don't let the negativity affect you and make it a part of you and get attached to it. And I went in and I told him, like, was this something that I asked him, excuse me, if this is something he learned or it was something he grew up like? I'm just really curious, because I've never seen a client have this incredible mindset. This is what I want everybody to have. And he said, well, I've worked with a world-renowned sports psychologist, and he's actually trademarked for the confidence therapist, right?
The confidence doctor.
Yeah, the confidence doctor, sorry. And I was like, wow. And I researched you, and that's how you're here on the channel. So thank you. I had to share that story.
I'm so glad that, his confident mindset, was still, sticking. That's great.
I was blown away.
The pudding right there. So that's great. That's a fantastic testimonial, Apollonia. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
And that makes me feel fantastic.
Of course. Thank you. So yeah, let's get into what we were talking about a little bit. So I know one of the questions that will come into play is like, how do I get there? Right. So I hear you talk about a lot of times like negative programming, how sometimes either we will be raised in a family that's probably has negative connotation, negative thoughts or negative aspects of their life or things that happen. And then we get into this negative programming in life. And people do I think the majority of everybody in the world wants to achieve happiness, wants to achieve success, wants to feel the freedom, that feeling of freedom, right? And a lot of people talk about, well, it's in yourself. You can't get freedom from a relationship. No amount of money is going to make you that happy, probably for temporary, but after you have it, it's just something else feels empty if you don't have internal happiness and things like that. So let's go into a little bit about that negative programming, and possibly a question would be like, how do we start getting out of that? What would you suggest?
Well, here's the first thing, and we know this from the scientific research from the past 60 years, that bad is stronger than good. Fear sticks, negative stuff sticks. When you walk into a room and you have maybe 5 people who, look at you, and maybe someone says, wow, you're really something else. You're great. And you go, oh, that makes me feel good. And then you have another person and they think you're the hottest thing since sliced bread. And then, ooh, I feel good about that too. But then you get to the 5th person and they go, you're not that big of a deal. Now that sticks. And you're sitting here going, hold on here. I had, 4 other positive strokes, but that one really sort of, that stuck with me. So what we understand is that bad is much stronger, than the good, and it resonates in the brain, and it actually sticks there in the brain. And that's why we say you have to have at least 7 or 8 attaboys, attagirls in order to kind of move through, that negative, thought, that implant. And that's a big thing. So, what you think about, you bring about. I mean, it's just keeps coming back. And even though we try to suppress it, and suppression is sort of trying to physically and psychologically remove something, but it keeps bubbling back up. And it's something like the ironic process theory that was created by Dr. Daniel Wagner, now at Harvard. And the ironic process theory is, the irony is, when you don't want something bad to happen, you say to yourself, I don't want this. Don't think about this. But the more that you don't want that, it actually keeps bubbling up. So the suppression factor really doesn't work at all. So that's why we have to understand, it's a big, big point to start with, is that a lot of people say, I want to be super confident. I want to be magnanimous. I want to be great. But the fear, the doubt, the worry, it holds me back. So when people come and see me, Apollonia, they say, are you going to help me become more confident? And I'm going, well, let's think about a scale now, all right? On this side, you've got trust and confidence and, hey, everything's going great. And it's really easy to be confident when everybody's kissing your buns, telling you how great you are and everything's working out. But on this side, you've got the bricks. It's doubt, worry, and fear. And if something bad, just a little thing goes bad, those scales tip immensely. And what, people ask me, they go, are you going to give me more confidence to outweigh that? And I'm going to go, not exactly. What I'm going to do is, let's look at the fear. Let's look at the doubt. Let's look at the worry. Let's remove that. And let's create some type of execution strategy, some type of process, procedures that help you create a feeling of success, maybe baby steps to success. And so after one little success, another success, and another success, and you sort of have created this positive momentum, the residue of all those successful experiences is really what we call, sweat equity or earned confidence. And it really sticks with you. So we have to really begin is that, hey, listen, no one wants to feel bad. No one wants to feel alone. No one wants to feel like they're an incredible loser. Okay. Everybody wants to be appreciated and valued and really loved, but it has to, begin with you. It really does. Confidence is something that, builds up from the inside and works its way to the outside, not the other way in. I think you were just alluding to that just a little bit earlier, but I think that is the best place to start when you start talking about building self-belief, self-confidence. And as an offshoot of that, it helps, justify your self-esteem. And let's make sure right now that we're not talking about self-confidence is self-esteem, because both of those are two sort of slightly different aspects. Self-confidence is believing that you can do something or aspire to achieve something. And self-esteem is the value. Even though I may not, achieve that, I still value myself as a human being. So that's a nice, demarcation between the two. But it's kind of nice because one kind of feeds into the other.
Mm-hmm. So I think a good starting point too, like and correct me if you think differently, but a way, like if someone had a lack of confidence, it's really about maybe implementing like hobbies, some goals, getting better in an area of life that they wish to flourish in, maybe picking up a guitar and starting with the little principal elements in order to get there and be better. Because as they start, if they want something or want to learn something new and they do, it becomes a reward. So it's something good too. So would you suggest something like that and starting with smaller tools to build into self-confidence? And if not, what tools would you recommend?
Well, it's sort of like going to school. We have algebra class, all right? No one knows all these different algebraic equations, after the first day. We have to start with the very basic building blocks. But, in developing self-confidence in almost anything, any endeavor, especially starting with yourself, if you are a do-it-to-yourself project, which is the ultimate self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yes.
you've got to start with, what is it that I really want? And if I really want it, Am I willing to comply? Compliance is a big, big factor in developing self-confidence. Are you willing to do what's necessary in order to get things done so that you can actually move towards your desired goal? Everybody wants to talk about goal setting, whether they're SMART goals, specific goals, measurable goals, attainable goals, all sorts of different goals. But the point that we have to have are task-focused process goals that help us get to the end result. And one of the things we have to develop is competence. You have to develop a psychological and physiological mastery of something. You just can't say, okay, I'm confident doing this. And you really don't know what you're talking about. That's why some of the most confident people in the world, and I hate to say it, they are the most unenlightened people in the world. They really don't even know, but they really believe that they know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then when they find out that they're incorrect or wrong, their whole confidence just crumbles, okay? Because what they believe to be true is now false. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect in psychology, is that we often overstate, and we have a bias, an illusory superiority bias, a cognitive bias that says, I know more about this than I really do, all right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of the other side of what we call the imposter syndrome. You have people who overestimate their confidence, who really don't know what they're talking about. And you have other people who have high talent, high skills, who underestimate their ability. And then they suffer from this imposter syndrome that says, I hope they don't find out about me.
Yeah.
So what we're really trying to do, and I think you're doing it in your world and I'm doing it in mine, is saying, okay, what is it that you really want? And are you really willing to go after it? Because if you're not willing to do what you say you're willing to do, then you probably didn't want it that much in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's the first place, I think we're going to start here. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally, I 100%. And I call it sometimes, like, what I say is getting to the root of what you want, or getting to the root of the issue, right? So I think a lot of times the arrogancy or the imposter syndrome can also come from ignoring the root, right? Ignoring what we've been through in life, like men or women, people in general, we have trauma sometimes in life. And if we ignore and don't get good with the thoughts that come into our head, and ignore the thoughts and not really focus on, why is this coming up? How can I heal this? It's going to continue to be there and be enforced in our lives, either in a negative or positive light, because there's so many people that have turned it around into positivity. And I think it's really about perspective. It's a shift of perspective and feeling like rewarded because this happened to me. And I always say, like, no shifts happen inside of a comfort zone. Growth happens outside of your comfort zone. And I think it's really important that, no matter male or woman, it doesn't matter. Life is really it's revolving, but it's always also constant work. No one's life is perfect. And that leads us into a little bit of what we wanted to talk about today too, is like, perfectionism is an illusion, right? So I'm sure you've had sports players that you've worked with, and they just want to be perfect. And they come to you and they're like, I just want my game to be the best. I want to be the next LeBron James. I want to be the next, what's the tennis player's name? Oh my gosh. Andre Agassi, right? That's the tennis player.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Williams or whoever.
Yeah. I want to be the next Tom Brady, and they picture them as perfect. And all three of them have a very amazing story that they weren't. Like, look at Michael Jordan. No one told him that he would be the best basketball player. People told him that he would fail, and he actually failed a lot of times before he became one of the all-time greatest basketball players, right? So I think a lot of times we aim towards perfectionism. Can we talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, perfectionism, I mean, by itself, the striving to be as good as you possibly can, the striving to be perfect. I mean, that's an admirable goal, but it's one that's very rarely attainable. And if you do attain perfection, what happens to those people? They think that that is the benchmark, the standard at which everything has to be. And for instance, I work with a lot of golfers, and the perfectionist, especially the distorted perfectionist, hits a shot and everyone around him or her goes, wow, that's a great shot. The perfectionist doesn't see it as perfect. He's always looking for something there. He goes, I towed it a little bit. I hit it a little bit, maybe one groove below. I just didn't hit it all that well. And everybody else is going, are you kidding me? I mean, that was a great shot. See, this person doesn't get any good mojo, doesn't get any good juju out of that shot. So they are always constantly hitting that ceiling. They never really feel good. They're never satisfied. And that's really the whole point. When you have a perfectionistic expectation, and let's think about what expectations are. An expectation is a preset standard of performance that says, this is the way it has to be, or should be, or could be, and I really hope it's going to be there. And what happens so often with perfectionists and other people is that we have this imaginary expectation of what we think something should be, and that doesn't match what we experience in reality. So we have this expectation gap here. And a great researcher, in Europe by the name of Nat Ware has done a lot of great work on that, talking about the failure to get what you want. Because I've always said that when your results don't match or equal your expectations, you become frustrated, you become angry, and you become disappointed and often depressed. So perfectionists, okay, even though they're striving for perfection, and I'll talk with them, they'll say, well, listen, that's what has gotten me here to this level right here. It's made me the very best in my activity. I'm sitting there going, yes. However, that same quest for this undying perfectionism is also going to hold you back from something that's even more important than that competency. And they go, what's that? And I go, that's your personal happiness and self-satisfaction, because you're never satisfied. You're always saying it has to be better. It could be better. Now, that's not saying that we need to actually improve ourselves and feel like we can get better every day. But the distorted perfectionists, they're never, ever satisfied. And with anything, and then whatever it is in their craft and their work, it sort of bleeds into their social life. It bleeds into their personal life. Nothing is good enough. It doesn't meet my standard, doesn't meet my criteria. And that's the first thing. I mean, hey, everybody, makes mistakes. Everybody has failings. Everybody has shortcomings. And what I'm always trying to help, my athletes understand and go, you're a human being. I mean, you talked about Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady's now moved here to the Florida area, and I'm in Orlando, and he's over in Tampa. And so I think, Gronkowski may join him over for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And just in a couple of weeks, Tampa Bay becomes, oh my, this could be something pretty spectacular here for this upcoming football season. But let's go back to Tom Brady. Here he was, a quarterback from the University of Michigan, and he gets drafted by the New England Patriots. Now, this is maybe some incentive for Tom Brady. I don't know if a lot of people, will remember this story, but he was walking in the parking lot, and Robert Kraft, the owner, looks at him, and Tom Brady was really excited to be there with the organization. He goes, "Hi, Mr. Kraft, how are you?" He goes, I know who you are. He goes, "You don't have to introduce yourself. You're my 6th round draft pick." He goes, I know who you are. And Tom Brady looked at him and sort of had that chip on his shoulder because he has always been underestimated and a little underappreciated. He goes, "Yes. And it's the very best damn, 6th round decision you'll ever make." And I know that Robert Kraft and they always sort of laugh about that. But I'm sitting here thinking that little chip on the shoulder, all of these years, Tom Brady hasn't forgotten that. Elite athletes, the best people in business, the best people in politics,
Yes.
they have a memory. And they don't forget. They don't forget sort of these barbs, these negative barbs. They stick with you. And so whether he's trying to prove something or that it's just something that he just feels this quest, to do, to go to another team. I know that Brett Favre, did it going from the Green Bay Packers to the Minnesota Vikings and had a pretty successful, second career, if you will. So we'll have to see, but that's the whole point, getting back, I digress a little bit, getting back to this whole notion of perfectionism. Perfectionism is also kind of leads into procrastinism because, a lot of perfectionists are great procrastinators. I won't, put myself out there until I get everything just
Yes.
right. I won't do this until all my ducks in a row. Oh, this isn't a good time to go meet somebody, or this isn't a good time. There's never really a good time, really. I remember years ago when I was doing my doctoral work at University of Virginia, a great professor said to me, he goes, "This is the place where you need to be making a lot of mistakes. I mean, mistakes in your research, mistakes in whatever you're doing with counseling, mistakes into going out." He goes, "You want to make mistakes here versus getting out in the real world and making some very, for lack of a better word, boneheaded mistakes that will really cost you and your reputation." So I thought that was really big. Let's not be afraid of making mistakes. And I always like sort of the saying is that your desire for success has to be 10 times greater than your fear of the failure. And I've always loved, that saying. I think it's
Oh,
very appropriate for everything we do in our life.
yeah, that was beautiful. So your desired success has to be bigger than your fear of failure.
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. So for perfectionism, it's really about number one, I would say mapping out your desired success and seeing which one's bigger. Is your success bigger for you, or is your fear of failure is bigger for you? And really having if it's success, then really having the discipline to go out there and be okay with messing up, being okay with making mistakes, because in those we find a lot of answers, right? So like you're with your Tom, going back to how you talked about Tom Brady, he always had this chip on his shoulder because it was also part of his past, but also made him great and also made him pretty humble for that matter. Tom Brady has done a lot. And he's
Oh,
openly talked about his relationship. I don't know if you know that, but he's openly talked about how his wife lost attraction for him at one point and he had to come back and regain that and what he had to do. And he's very humble, and I see that also too in how he plays with the players and how the players actually look up to him, because of that. Not only is he humble, but he becomes relatable no matter what area of life he's in and where people see him. So yeah.
I think that's really what great athletes, entertainers, celebrities do. And what most of us fail to realize, we put them on sort of this perceptual, peak
Pedestal.
up here. We put them up here on the pedestal. Ooh, like they can't be normal human beings. And they are very, very human. And they bleed and they feel bad. And people, when they realize, wow, he or she's a real person. Yeah, they are. They have feelings too. But what they've done a really good job of wearing sort of this mask, this veneer, if you will. When I get in and I get into the arena, I get on the ice rink, or whatever it is. This is, my persona here. This is who I am. Now, I think what happens for most athletes is that when they get outside of that comfort zone, the confines of their activity base, now they got to face the real world, and they're going, what do I do? And we were talking about this success and failure for people who are really driven, who are really tend to be successful. I don't care. I'm not talking about the super mega rich. I'm just talking about people who are successful and happy. They have a need to achieve. This all goes back to basic motivation theories. The need to achieve. If your need to achieve is highly motivated to achieve something, you're a high achiever. You're a go-getter. You know, if that is stronger than your need to avoid failure, okay, so it's always sort of this basic approach avoidance. Are you really going to go after something, or are you trying not to lose it? And I've always said, to my players, every one of them, regardless of what sport, even, my corporate people, business people, are you going out to be great? I mean, to be great, to be comfortable in your own skin, to have fun, to enjoy and just seize every opportunity? Or are you trying to be careful, trying to impress people, trying not to make mistakes? Because those are two different forks in the road. And
Yep.
and I guarantee you, the road less traveled is everybody's on the super highway. Say, I just don't want to lose stuff. And that's really where loss aversion comes in, which is the tendency for, I don't want to lose something that I already have, versus putting that same energy and say, let's go out and get some more. All right.
Mhm.
People are more protective of trying to protect, their little nest egg than they are trying to go out and actually increase it. And that's really what, the big difference between the go-getters and the sitter-downers is all about. The go-getters are, all right, so I've lost this. Let's go get another.
Yeah.
Let's go get another. It's sort of my pizza theory. It's sort of like, how many pieces of pizza can you eat at a pizza buffet? If someone says you only get one, you better sit there and go, boy, I really like that one piece of pizza. You're a go-getter. Hey, let's go get some more pizza. Let's
Yeah.
go. Let's go get 3 or 4 more.
Go to
So
another pizza
those are
place.
those are the people I'm trying to work with.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, and just kind of someone that is motivated, obviously, you want to work with, because what I've noticed is not everybody is ready to work with a coach. Not everybody's ready to work with a therapist. Not everybody's ready to work with a psychiatrist, or and the thing about that is, like, you have to be ready. Like, the person has to be willing to change, right? So if we already have this block, like, I don't want to change, and we're looking for the secret ingredient, like this coach or this therapist has, or this doctor has a secret ingredient for the pill to change our internal happiness, is like, it doesn't ever work. And I've noticed that, and I've actually unfortunately had to let go of clients because they were in that point of their life. And I was like, when you make the decision that you want to change, then contact me. And that's the number one thing, because I've noticed there's so much that can happen if you're willing to change and willing to put in the work, right? So for like a perfectionism, and it brings me to what you said brought me to a memory of when I first started my practice. Was Dr. Winters, I was horrible in videos. I mean, I would freeze up and I'd be like, that was me. And I just kept pushing because I was like, I know I have a message. I know I need to share. I know I need to help. But then I can go on a stage with 1,000 people and just kill it. But on the lens by itself, me in a room, lights, it gives me goosebumps because it's so true. It scared me to death. And then I started tackling myself, expectations, fear, judgment. You can get into a room of 1,000 people on stage, own it, kill it, and have, because the energy, I would just really take in all the energy, and that helped me.
Yes.
But then in a room with a lens, you can't do anything. And I would judge myself. You're perfect here, but you're not perfect here. And I just remember having a moment with myself, and I cried in front of the lens. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm not going to be able to spread my message. And I went through all of that. And then I told myself, in that minute, after I let myself go through the emotion, I told myself, what is it that you want? What is the bigger picture? You going in front of 1,000 people, did you do that the first time? No. How many times did it take? The first time I went on a public stage, I was shaking. The mic was shaking so much when I was on the stage. And I had to bring myself back to that moment. And I was like, it took work for you to get there. So it's going to take work for you to do this on video. And so I remember just saying that to myself, and my goal outweighed my perfectionism in that moment. And so I pushed myself and pushed myself and pushed myself. And within 2 years of my channel being open, it's over 350,000 subscribers just on video on there, and some videos have gone viral and things like that. So it just goes to show, like, if your goals are so much bigger, the energy that you create and your mindset that you create can outweigh everything. Because no matter who you are, like you said before, like, people put Tom Brady, you'll put him on a pedestal. And I call it to putting women, people, men, just in general, that are human, just like you, on pedestals, or you start idolizing them, but they breathe the same way. They bleed the same way. They have doubts too. So no one is better than anybody. Everybody's equal, and everybody has a different message and different thing to give in life, I think, right?
Well, I think that's exactly true, and especially in these difficult times with the viruses. I always say, and I've said this a couple of times, no one is immune. I mean, it doesn't discriminate, between color, race, money, gender. I mean, everyone here is equally vulnerable. And I think that's the same way in life. And what most people don't believe, or they've never heard it before, is that every day we breathe in about 100 million viruses every day. And our immune system, the genius of the human organism, man, Homo sapiens, we have evolved through many centuries and have endured plagues and locusts and famine And we always adapt. And that's the whole, thing about, being human, is that we feel, we think, we touch, we experience, we grow, and we fail. And I think because failing's hard and we know that bad is stronger than the good, what happens, we almost condition ourselves into negative programming. And what I find a lot of my athletes, a lot of my people do, they'll sit there and they will actually debate and argue and fight for their fear. They will fight for their failure. And I'll sit there and I'll give them, like a box of Kleenex and say, here, cry about it. All right. Have a pity party if you want. All right. But it's not going to change anything. And you're exactly right, Apollonia. People will change when they're sick and tired. And when they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, that is the catalyst for change. And that's when they will come and see me. And I know that when people come see me, and probably, when you're coaching them, they go, wow, I wish I'd seen you 5 years earlier. I wish I'd seen you 10 years earlier. What was I waiting for? Well, again, it's the fear of, I don't know. It's the fear of also expectations not being realized. It's that, what if she doesn't help me? What if he doesn't, really have the answers? Now I've really put myself on the limb out here. And if he doesn't help me, gosh, I'm screwed. I'd rather sit here and say, nah, it won't work. And not really know that and find out for sure, rather than put myself out there and risk. So people would really rather fight for the safety of their own failure than risk having success. And that's a huge, huge factor that we have to get to. And we also talk about another thing. Yes, I think another thing is, when we start talking about fear as human beings, we have fear of failure, and fear of embarrassment, and fear of looking stupid. I mean, you talk about
rejection.
Yeah, you're stage fright almost. It's like, this anticipatory anxiety, like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting any energy back here from this little box that's looking at me. And that's why you have this human connection factor. It gives you energy and you feed off of that. Hey, how's everybody doing? It's great to be here. That little box is just sitting there looking at you. And I always, think about, it's like I'm talking to a whole bunch of people when I actually look into this box here. It's great to have you here on this podcast, because I can see, your face and your smile and everything. And so I'm talking to you and talking to hopefully hundreds of thousands of people. But the biggest thing is that you have to, every day when you look in the mirror, when you're getting yourself ready, when you're shaving, I think the biggest thing that we have to have as human beings is the belief that I believe in you. And there'll be so many times I'll be looking at the mirror. It could be late at night. And I'm not talking about whether I've had a few drinks or whatever. I'm just talking, really do this visual inspection and look at this person. And I'll look, and they always say that, the reflection you see is not really the true reflection. We have true reflection mirrors now. But how other people see you is different than maybe how you see you. And I remember my mother telling me from a very, very early age, and it was these words that resonated in my mind. She goes, and she whispered to me as a young boy, I was about 7 or 8, and she whispered and she goes, I believe in you. Wow. And I remember that, and I thought, wow, I mean, someone I trusted so much, I believed in so much. And so every time, I look in the mirror now, is that it isn't just her voice, it's my voice saying, I believe in you. I mean, this is me. This is the person we're with 24/7, 365. And if you don't have that faith and that self-belief, in yourself, nobody else will. And people say, well, where does it start? Well, the tipping point is it has to start, it has to trigger someplace. And that's really what, people are watching us today. What do? You do one thing. And I always like the Kentucky Fried Chicken theory. We do one thing well, we fry chicken, all right? Or the City Slickers, it's one thing in life. That Curly told Billy Crystal in the movie, one thing. He goes, what is it? He goes, that's what you got to find out for yourself. And that's sort of really what we are as sort of, leaders, pathfinders, whatever you say, is to help people. What is that one thing? What's that one thing that makes me unique? And I think if there's one thing that people find is that I am an incredible me. There's no one else like me. No one else has my attributes, my characteristics, my thoughts. And I think we have to sort of kind of really take a deep appreciation in that,
Mm.
because that is the sole basis of creating enduring confidence, is that, I really like who I am. And it was funny because here we are in 2020 talking about this, but I remember listening to Earl Nightingale, and he said the strangest secret back in 1953, and I'll date myself because that was the year I was born. Whew, it seems like just a long time ago, but I can't believe I'm that old. But the point of it was, he said, what you think about most of the time is really what you bring about. So if we're talking about going into the direction of your dreams, of your thoughts, I'm always about helping people create a living reality. Okay, so where do you want to go? All right, so you have to have one thought that just kind of, this is really who I am. And I remember writing something down because I've been doing a lot of these webinars and podcasts, here while we've been in sort of quarantine. And I found something, I had written something in 1981 on some yellow legal pad. And I just looked at it. And the thing it said, don't, give up on yourself. Go after your dream, no matter what anybody else says. You are responsible for your own success. And if everybody else says, hey, I'm going this way, I'm going to go the other way. And then I remember it said, you'll probably find that that's the right direction to take. I remember saying that myself. I remember writing Dr. Robert K. Winters hundreds and hundreds of times just so I could actually have that vision in my head.
Wow.
All right. So these are just little things. And people go, wow, I wish, I could be as successful as you. I don't know. I mean, I gave up a lot of things. I've worked, years and years, worked for years and years for no money, just doing it because I loved it. So when we try to have, people listen in and go, wow, where's all this confidence? Where's all this faith? It was self-generated. It was self-created. As, Ben Hogan, the great golfer, said, the secret, I had to dig it out of the dirt. All right. And I think that's kind of a neat segue into something that you may want to talk about.
Yeah, I want to mention a couple things that you said. So one of them, when you were talking about, standing in front of the mirror and looking at yourself, like your interior will always outweigh your exterior, no matter what, right? Your interior of who you are will always outweigh your exterior. This is in life. This is in your relationships. This is in your work. This is in everything, right?
Right.
Because I think also too, it's an energy that we present. It's an energy that we give off, right? I mean, just for us, for example, I emailed you and you're like, well, let me get on a call. Let me see if and then the first 2 minutes, you're like, oh yes, I'm going to do this podcast with you, because you notice my energy. And I totally get that because that's really important too, and that was one thing that came up to me when you were talking. And then another thing too is like, let me think, it's on the tip of my tongue. The interior always outweighs your exterior, but also too, what we do in regards to working on ourselves is always going to come from, obviously, like you said, like it's going to come from us. It puts in the work. But something I say in my practice so much is comparison is the root of all evil. Like the moment you start comparing yourself to other people, it has no good outcome. Because we always look at, oh, I want to be Dr. Winters. I want to be Apollonia Ponti. I want to be Tom Brady. I want to be LeBron James.
Right.
Yes, we can use that to encourage us to be someone better, but there's a uniqueness about you being your own self, right? Because I remember when I started the practice, I was looking at people and I was like, okay, I need to do it like this. I need to do it like them. And I wasn't growing. And then the moment I started just being myself, I didn't edit. Sometimes I'll be on my in interviews or in speeches or in videos, and especially videos because you can edit things out. And I in a video, I'd be like, what's that word again? I can't remember that word. It's on the tip of my tongue. And typically you can edit that stuff out. And I chose not to because I wanted to show people this who I was. And
Right.
it expanded my practice. The number one thing that people say is you're authentic, you seem real, and you are very open. There's something very open about you that just draws me in, right? I feel safe kind of thing. And that comes with just being who you are and owning who you are. Like I had a fear of public speaking. I had a huge fear of public speaking. I never thought I would be good enough. I failed high school twice, And now look at this, I'm doing so much. And that's the thing is like, and I look at those stories from my past and I say, if I never failed, then I would have never had the drive to become better. If I never failed, then I wouldn't be who I am today. And I wouldn't know what failure felt like, right? Because failure also to me, it's hard in the beginning, but it's also rewarding at the end because I know when I fail, I learn something from it,
Oh
right?
yeah, because failing is the fertilizer of success. That
Yes.
was, basketball coach Rick Pitino said that years ago. I always love that, and that's the whole point. And I want to talk about that fertilizer because everybody has the over the fence view, like, wow, their grass is really greener over there. Everyone
Yes, but
has,
it wasn't
every,
always green.
yeah, and the grass looks greener over there. What you realize, or this person has more, or boy, I wish I was with that person. What's happening now, if all of this is that when you look over there, that fertilizer is the same crap, all right, you had to deal with
Mhm.
over here. It just looks better over here because you're having a real, very myopic, short-sighted view of it. And that's the whole point. I think that's the biggest thing in this world is that we always have this, everybody has more than me. And that's not really, accurate at all.
Mm, yeah, it's so true. It's really not.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like I had a pretty big interview too. I've had a couple big interviews during quarantine because people are they're more available now. They're home. They're like, I want to spread my word. I want to spread my message. And I just remember getting a little more nervous than normal. And I think nerves are also good because they make you more alert. And I've been able to have a better relationship with nerves because I was like, you're not supposed to be nervous. And I was very like hard on myself, perfectionism, obviously.
Sure.
um, and and now I've had created that good relationship. But then I noticed I was a little bit more nervous than normal, right? And then the first thing I said is that person is just like you. She is a person.
Right.
She is a person. And as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, I'm good. And then it was fine. And that's the thing is like our mind is wired to protect us, right? So our mind is wired to protect us, but we're in charge of the thoughts that we let in. Because if we don't get back to the present moment and we live in a past or a past or future, then we create an illusion around our thoughts because we don't have control of the past or future. All we have control is in our present moment. And I think a lot of times people are in this in a state of lack or scarcity because of the fact that they are aware of the thoughts that are coming in, but they choose to let themselves drown in those thoughts, and then they become believable, and then what you think of expands, and then you get so far down that grave of thoughts that it's hard sometimes to even see out of it. And what I tell some clients too is we're the the number one thing to start training basic subconscious mind or your mindset is being aware of your thoughts, either keeping a journal. Not every thought you come into your life you're gonna have to put in a journal. You're not gonna be able to have to do that. But the negative thoughts and becoming aware of what you're telling yourself and then turning it around and not allowing it to stay in you for more than 60 seconds.
Right.
Um, and I think that practice helped me a lot. I overcame a lot of anxiety. I overcame a lot of depression in my 20s. And I overcame a lot of that because of how I trained my mind. My fiance used to be a very big, he didn't go into the MBA because he got injured, and now he's a very good entrepreneur.
Mm.
And he also wanted to do sports psychology. And I told him I was interviewing you, and he's like, "Oh, this is amazing."
That's good.
Yeah.
The funny thing you talk about, the stage fright, and I learned something a long time ago from my very good friend, Dr. Herbert Price. And he said to me, he goes, I read something, Bob, he goes, that really helped me. And I thought it could help, everybody, listening in today with everything. He said, when you get ready to go out, on stage and talk with these people, he goes, there's three things you need to be thinking. First of all, I'm glad that I'm here. That's the first thing. I'm glad for this opportunity. I'm glad to be here, whether you're meeting someone or meeting 1,000 people. The second thing is, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad, I'm here and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad to be with you. And the third thing was the most important thing he said to me, and it just resonated with me. And it was, I know what I know, and this is my story, and this is how I tell it. Because I remember Dr. Price saying to me, and we were talking to law enforcement officers, within a state, and they had FBI people and CIA people, and we were talking about sports vision training. I have a sports vision background, and talking about shoot or don't shoot, reflexive firing. And he said, you know 1,000 times more about vision, the mind control, motor reflexes than any of these people do. So don't try to overwhelm them with your intelligence. Just talk with them. Just hang out with them. And I thought about that. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. And I know what I know. And I think if people, in one-to-one or in group situations, just sort of quit trying to put the airs of, oh, I'm going to try to impress you. Because when you try to go out and impress people, I know when people say, well, who have you worked with? Who's some of your best clients? I go, well, I've had a few. I don't want to actually name drop or say, I've done this, done that, or whatever. Because when you try to impress people, people are very savvy. They go, this person's trying to impress me. I'm not impressed. And what I've found is that, when I'm just being who I am, I'm just Bob Winters and not Dr. Bob, or hey, who is this guy? People empathize. That's the whole point about they connect with you because they find out you're a human being, and I think that's the whole point. When we want something so bad, and this is what you and I were talking about, a few days ago. When you want something, when you value something so much, and you're trying so hard, you have this level of triosity, this level of wantism. It has huge value to you. And so you're just, and if you're just out, I remember, years ago, being out with my beautiful wife, and we're on a date. And I remember I was, hey, are you having a good time? I'm having a good time. I hope you're having a good time. And I was probably suffocating her, right? And she's probably saying, hello, sit back here, sit back here, Charlie. Just relax a little bit. And so she's had the foresight to see the real me, and not sort of this, hey, I want to, impress you.
Yeah.
So when we quit trying to impress people, and we actually take off sort of this mask of false, what it is, showmanship, and really have people see you. You were talking about the interior is greater than the exterior. When the inner glow comes out, it makes everyone much more attractive.
Yes.
And that's what people do. And I think when we have our best dates, our best parties, our best meetings, it's not when it has to be like this, it has to be like that. It's pretty spontaneous. People, hey, we're just hanging out, we're having a good time. Everybody's relaxed, everybody's comfortable, and the real glow from within starts to show. And that's when people have a great time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that you said that. That is amazing. Man, I think of things too. And when you say that, is authenticity is really the key to everything, and just being so relaxed in your demeanor. And because when we're tense or we're nervous or we're trying too hard, it can give someone else an illusion of what we are not. And then we can't connect. We can't connect, or we just feel at a state of lack because we're just giving and giving and giving and giving when we're outside of being authentic, that then we feel drained, drowned, tired from it, and I say that too, is like, there's no key tactic. There's no like XYZ and this is going to cure it. Like, it's just really about like being real with yourself, and as you know, like I work with a lot of men. And one of the biggest things that I've seen in my community is, how do I share my feelings? How do I share vulnerability? How do I be a masculine man, but share that vulnerability? And I think in the society that we live in today, especially with our millennial men, boys, men, and everything else, is the society has portrayed men to not to mask their feelings. Like, you do not get emotional. That's only women. Women only get emotional because they have their, you know what, the time of the month, and this is this and this and this, right? And so we
Right.
told men, like, if they don't show emotions, then they're a man. But if they show emotion, then they're a baby, they're weak, and they're needy. And emotion is what gets people to relate to you and to feel connected to you. And I also believe that emotion isn't trained to be taught with men and women, I think, for in regards to vulnerability. And something that I always say is vulnerability is to be shared, basically emotion, to be informative, right? To be informative because you're coming from a place of abundance, you're coming from a place of belief, you're coming from a place of, you're not coming from a place of perfectionism, you're not coming from a place of fear, you're not coming from a place of expectations, you're not coming from a place of negativity, everything opposite of that. Because when we share vulnerability or emotions, it's because we're coming from those places. So now we're sharing our vulnerability at your expense or at my expense, and we have more to lose. So I think that, you know, in this day and age that we live in today, it's so important for men to understand, especially with working and relationships, like even with just in regards to you, you know, just within your email, you were very open, and that made me feel comfortable. And two, with our relationships, in order for men to connect with women, in order for women to connect with men, in order for us to be great in our meetings, in order for us to excel, I think, in sports, we have to have that component of EQ, right? Like we have to have that component of emotional intelligence in order to adapt to our environments. Would you agree to that?
I do. And I think one of the most important things that, I've learned over the years, okay, and this isn't male or female, it's just being a human being,
Yeah.
is that I sort of like people that say what they mean and mean what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And what you see is what you get. Now, you may not like it. I remember I had a very tough, strict upbringing. And my mother was the matriarch of the family. And she said, by God, you may not love me, you may hate me, but one of the things you're going to do is you're going to respect, our rules. And so I had a very strong, maternal presence, had a very strong paternal presence as well. But I mean, this is the way it is. And whether that was old school, I happen to believe it was cool school, because I think we do have to be, vulnerable, but we also have to say, hey, it's almost like confidence, if you will. When we say it, this athlete that we're working with, wow, she's really super cocky. I don't like her. Why? Because she's a little bit more extroverted, because she sort of wears her emotions on her sleeves, because she's not afraid to say things. No, I just don't like her. I just don't like her attitude. And I said, well, what does that say about you?
Yep. Mirror.
I mean, what does that say about you? I mean, okay, so she's an athlete. She's doing the very best she can. She goes, well, she's so selfish. And I always tell people this, everybody goes, you're so self-centered. You're so egocentric. Selfishness gets a bad rap in our Western society, because selfishness really means, that you have the high personal regard for your own well-being.
Mm-hmm.
You're accountable. You're responsible for yourself, because if you don't do it for yourself, hell, nobody else is. Really, okay? So I don't like the word selfish. I like the word self-full. You're full of yourself, giving yourself the things that you need in order for you to grow, in order for you to do the things that you need to do, not at the expense of others. I mean, it's great to be, a wonderful human being, but sometimes you need to give yourself things for you. I mean, the nurturing, the caregiving, and the strokes. And I don't mean to be like Stuart Smalley and sitting there in front of, the mirror and go, daggone it, you're good looking, you're smart enough, Karen. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, but you just really need to kind of sit back and go, you know what? I really like what you did today. And if there's one thing that I could actually help, all of our listeners and viewers today is, if you are not moving into the direction of how you want to be or what you want, then you really haven't defined it, that well, or you're pretty happy with where you are at status quo, or you really didn't want it that much in the first place. But you've got to actually every day at the end of the day say, did I take advantage of all the opportunities that I could have had today? Because here's the one thing that's our most precious resource, and it's time, and it's ongoing, and it's flowing forward. We never get it back. I mean, here you and I have been talking, for maybe an hour or so. And for those of you viewers, I hope, you enjoyed it, because you're never getting it back.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it is what it is. And that's why we talk about the precious present. It's the gift of this moment. And that's really what we have. We have this moment. But time is an ongoing sequence of events taking place. We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. And I heard a little rhyme for many years that said, I have no future, I have no past. My goal is to make this moment last. So wherever you are, whatever you do, you're just living that life, that moment, as gloriously as you possibly can. And that's really what true confidence and true living is all about.
Oh my goodness. Yes, there's some gold in this. And this is a great way to end this podcast. And I want to end it with those of you that are listening is now, after you've listened to this podcast and seen this video, what are you going to do with your present moment? What are you going to do moving forward? And I hope this helped you kind of get clarity in your life today of where you're at. And Dr. Winters, if you can tell our listeners where they can find you, that would be amazing.
Well, I take in all sorts of clients. They can actually reach me and look at my websites. I have several of them. One of them is drbobwinters.com. That's DRBOB Winters.com. And that's one. And there's another one, The Confidence Doctor. The Confidence Doctor, that's who I am. That's my trademark, worldwide. And for those, golfers who, know who David Ledbetter is, one of the world's best teacher, I've been associated with him for 20 years at the David Ledbetter World Teaching Headquarters at davidledbetter.com. So any one of those, or you could Google my name and I would show up, and you can get a hold of me. And I'm always, looking to help, motivated people or people who are stuck, stale, or just want to find out how great that they can become, whether it be business, personal, or sports. So it's great. Apollonia, it's been great here being with you. It's just flown by. I hope we get a chance to do this again.
Yes, I would love to. I'm so happy that you're on. And also I'll put those links in the description box in my podcast and my videos, so they'll be able to find it very easy. So guys, the ones that are listening, they'll be in the description box below. And I always end it here, Dr. Winters. What is one of your all-time favorite quotes that has maybe stuck in your head or really changed your life or motivated you in some way?
The one, it was one that I sort of created, but I think it's big, is that patience is confidence waiting to happen. Because patience really is nothing short of a miracle, because patience is not a passive ingredient or attribute. Patience is having the patience of a warrior, making sure that everything is set. Because if you can stay patient and wait for those great opportunities to come, they will come, and confidence tends to come knocking. So patience is confidence waiting to happen.